Hello, hello, hello. This is Raven, and today I'm going to be reviewing Beastly, which is a young adult movie that is supposed to be a modern retelling of Beauty and the Beast. Now, this is one of those movies I'm not really sure how to feel about it, so I'm just gonna jump right in and give you the trigger warnings. Now, there's not a whole lot for trigger warnings in this. It's relatively, of course, if you have certain triggers like tattoos or, certain less common triggers, then this could very well trigger you, and I do recommend you ask someone else who's watched the movie whether certain things are in it. You can ask me if you want to ask someone who's watched the movie whether there are certain elements to it that you might find triggering, but anyway, the major ones are that there's a little bit of body horror. The main male lead has a lot of like metal in his face and just sort of around in him. Kind of looks like welding, and then there's like some weird staple looking things in his nose. I don't know, I'm not a big fan of the design, but anyway, that could be potentially triggering to people if they have kind of a thing about that. There's also some stalking. It's portrayed as romantic, which I know a lot of people have a problem with. He doesn't he does like watch her from a distance, but it's portrayed more as like he's too shy to go up to her, so he just kind of stands in the background and like observes her, waiting for a good chance to go up and talk to her. And obviously, the story sets it up as good because he's there to save her from, spoiler alert, he's there to save her from some drug dealers and, all that good stuff. But there is a problem, with the whole stalking thing. Stalking is not romantic at all, and it's a very scary thing that a good number of people go through. And I don't like it when stalking is portrayed as romantic in movies. The other one is that there's a little bit of racism. The main character literally says that his housekeeper, who is from, I think, Jamaica, he doesn't know where she's from, he just knows that she's black, and he goes, when she says she's going home, he says, so you can go home to your 16 children, which is alarming. I don't know why we're supposed to like this guy, but I'll get into that. It's portrayed as bad, like he's obviously in the wrong, but if you are very sensitive to those kind of remarks, you might want to skip that scene or, mute it for a little while when the housekeeper is there. This is like the first time you see her, so it's pretty easy to spot, but anyway, things that they did right. This is actually kind of a short list. This movie isn't very good, but what they did right is that they did hold my interest. Dragged a little bit near the beginning, but there was enough stuff going on that I was never bored. I liked the supporting cast. The housekeeper was she was kind of a one-note character, but at least she was very warm. And the tutor was kind of, again, a one-note character, but he was very likable. The cinematography is decent. The shots are, well set up. It's nothing spectacular, but it's serviceable. The soundtrack is appropriate. Songs, have something to do with the scene that they're in, even though sometimes they're a little on the nose. They're still, okay music. If you like sort of the indie stuff, it's good music. The sets are nice. I did appreciate the sets. The strained relationship between father and son was well done. There was a lot of tension between them, and I liked that. And there was a nice musical cue where the main character, Kyle, he like closes his laptop, and as you hear the snap of the laptop closing, the song starts for the next scene. So it's kind of the snap starts the transition, so that's kind of nice. On to what I didn't like. This is a big list, so forgive me for rambling. Alright, basically, Kyle, the main character, he's a scumbag, and he has no actual charm before his little change of heart. It makes no sense for anybody to like him. He's racist, like, he is bigoted, he fat shames people, he thinks that your looks are directly tied to how much people will like you and how successful you'll be. He, was running for some sort of president of some sort of thing at his school, and He literally went, "You're all ugly, you should vote for me because I'm hot and rich." And it worked, and I don't know why. Nobody should like him. He should be, the pompous asshole that people, make fun of because he's so pompous and such an asshole. So, the beast design, I mentioned this earlier, is also terrible. And it's not because it's ugly. I mean, I know it's supposed to be ugly, but there are ways of doing that that don't seem like a completely slapdash effort where they put together several designs and didn't bother to make them fit cohesively together. The metal, I would have definitely left the metal out, because it doesn't seem organic, And we're never given an explanation for why for what he tells people. The only thing we hear is that he literally tells his housekeeper and his tutor, that a witch cursed him. So we don't know if that's what he's telling everybody, or if he's trying to make up some excuse for how he looks like that, but you would think that the doctors, they showed him going to several doctors who said they couldn't do anything, but you would think that doctors would be able to, at least take the metal out of him. It would leave more scarring, I'm assuming, but they could at least get it out of him, and for some reason they can't. So that just kind of, it's nonsensical. Personally, I would have gone with there is kind of a cool bit of the design where there's a tattoo of a rose bush, and it changes with the seasons, and when the roses bloom in the spring, he's out of time to, change back. But personally, I would have just kept that tattoo, maybe kept some of the tattoos, maybe made them symmetrical, so that they were more stylized and not just so randomly placed. And I would have done a lot more scarring, because, I mean, I know that a lot of people do have significant scarring, and that's not ugly, but in terms of how this character thinks, at the beginning of the movie, I think it would have been more appropriate than tattoos, although it does tie in to how the witch has a tattoo on her face, and he mentions that, so it is thematically appropriate, but I just wasn't a fan. Again, stalking is not romantic. It's not portrayed as, the best thing ever, but it's not pointed out that he's being kind of a weirdo for doing it. There's also this strange bit at the end where Kyle asks the witch to give his tutor back his sight, and also his housekeeper back her family. That I don't have a problem with. The family thing, that's pretty cool. Shows that he wasn't thinking only of himself, but the part where he wants his tutor to have his eyesight back is a little bit, I don't know, just sits kind of weird with me, because the only time we ever see the tutor say anything about wanting his sight back is this offhand thing where Kyle asks him if there's any kind of eye operation he could get, and the tutor goes, miracles only, I'm afraid, and then he goes, thanks. So that's really the only indication you get that he wants his sight back. Otherwise, he seems perfectly able to function in life. He even still, they make a point of saying that he's still a very sharp dresser, even though he can't see what he's wearing. So, he seems to be perfectly well adjusted, and doesn't seem to be having, he doesn't seem to be in a depression over it. And I know that's not always an indicator of whether or not someone would want their sight back, but it seemed weird that the sighted guy was going to a witch and being like, I want this guy to get his sight back, instead of having the blind guy explicitly, that's what I meant, explicitly say, this sucks, I want my sight back, or, if I could get my sight back, I would. So, I don't know, it was just a little bit weird there. The switchover from shithead to good guy was really abrupt. There's this part where the housekeeper tells him that the girl that he's imprisoned in his house doesn't like expensive stuff. She obviously doesn't want to be impressed with expensive gifts, and he just goes, oh, this isn't a direct quote, but he basically goes, oh, I should think. That's a good idea. And he just automatically switches over to this thoughtful guy. So it just felt very rushed, the whole thing. There's also a plot hole. Does everyone just believe this guy is cursed? And I mentioned this earlier, what kind of excuse did he give people for his appearance? It's never explained. I feel like there should be, an extra half hour to an hour of this movie, honestly. Lindy, the girl, is also written kind of grossly. She's like a very sappy, hippie kind of girl who's like, she's so dreamy and she's so kind hearted. And she always falls for the bad boys. She wants to fix everything for everyone and she wants to make people happy. And it's just, she's a very shallow character. Like, we don't really see, I mean, yeah, she, like, gets coffee at this little coffee place. She likes a certain candy. We see her, like, listening to music. But, I mean, it screams, one-dimensional quirky character. Also, Kyle blackmailing Lindy's dad into letting him take his daughter is really fucked up, regardless of how protective he feels of her. I mean, he is blackmailing this guy into giving his daughter to a guy he's never met. That's just wrong. And Kyle's reactions when Lindy doesn't like the expensive stuff he's trying to give her are comical at best, and really they're supposed to be, they're supposed to remind you of the Beast's reactions in Beauty and the Beast, but really they just come off as childish and ridiculous and kind of scary, because if he's throwing a little tantrum over her just not accepting, a Prada whatever, like, how is he gonna react when she tells him no when she tells him no to his face? Like, it's just a little bit questionable, and it made me uncomfortable. And overall, the movie just feels very rushed. It is a brisk 80 minutes minus the credits, and it feels super, super rushed. It feels like they left out so much character development, so much plot. It feels like they were trying to tell the bare bones of the story as quickly as they possibly could at the expense of the characters in the story. I still don't know if I actually like it. I might. I've seen it twice now, and I probably will see it again. But I don't know if that necessarily means that I liked it or that it's definitely not a good movie. But I don't know if it's edging into that so bad it's good territory, or if it's just kind of a bad movie that I'm fascinated by. I don't know. I really don't know about this one. I know it's been out for like 3 or 4 years, but I just happened to watch it recently, and I was like, I should review this because this was weird. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this. God, this went on for a long time. I've recorded for 14 minutes now. We'll see how short I cut it down to, but thank you for listening. If you've listened all the way to the end, bravo. And I will see you on the dark side of the moon.